Good afternoon to everyone, all of those that are listening to this webinar in real life, and also to the ones that are viewing this webinar in YouTube or any other channel. And after, once this conference has already been broadcasted. I want to introduce myself today because we had an unfortunate last minute problem. So the person that was supposed to be introducing me couldn't make it. But that will give us more time to actually get to the point and really talk about what we are about to talk. Because I'm not the important person here, you are the important ones. So I just want to remind you that you can participate through the hashtag in Twitter EAE conference. So please write it down, EAE conference hashtag, because it's very important that we try to make it more interactive and more dynamic. Okay, that will be easier for me and it will be easier for you. So anyway, today we're going to talk about traction. We're gonna get deeper into that in a few minutes. But before that, I want to put this webinar in perspective. Compared to basically the series of classes of webinars about how to build successful startups, how to build successful companies. We've gone already through the main topics already about the different steps in order to become entrepreneurs, not just to start a company, but to become entrepreneurs. And we've discussed as well about the definition of success. So when we talk about building successful startups, it's not just about how much money we make, that of course, the more the better, but that we do that with our own purpose, align with our own purpose, and align with our own values, with the right people, applying the right methodologies, therefore building the right culture, and then creating a great product that allow us to grow in users and customers. So we've covered all those topics. We've seen the golden circle, how important it was to build companies from the why, and then go for the how, and then start with the what. But not start the companies with the what, with the product or the company itself, but with the right purpose. That will give us the right motivation, intrinsic motivation to have the perseverance that we will need eventually along the way. Since, as you know, and if you don't, you should at this time, that becoming an entrepreneur is really, really, really hard. So my advice is the more aligned with your passion, the more aligned with your purpose that you are when you start becoming an entrepreneur, the more chances you will have to resist the times that you will be bombed with so many doubts from within and from the outside. So once we discuss about these motivations, we've talked about the importance of the team. We've seen the different roles, the hacker, the hustler, how, the more execution-oriented people, more hustling, more sales-oriented people, and how those profiles, those archetypes of entrepreneurs, of partners can actually complement. We've discussed also that this kind of complementary relationship between founders and among other factors has a very, very, very important impact on what we call the culture of the startup. So we've seen a whole seminar about culture eats a strategy for breakfast. That's the name of a very famous book on this matter. And of course, I think, and I made clear in the previous sessions, that is one of the main and most relevant aspects to predict success within a company. Now, after team and culture issues, we've discussed many aspects about methodology. We've seen customer discovery, customer development, and lean startup. I'm not going to get very much deeper into that, but we've known how these methodologies were focused on basically two main things. The first thing is to not focus on the solution, but to just try to find a problem. And then once we found this problem that we identify, and of course that leads to an opportunity, then we shall apply these other methodologies to convey or to make a hypothesis about a potential solution. And for that, we will keep in mind all the time the customer. The customer as the center of our value proposition. I know it sounds cliche, everybody says the customer is so important. I mean, it's been like that forever and ever. However, in this case, it's not just about the customer once the company or the product have been built, but throughout the whole design or definition of the whole value proposition and the product itself. So once again, keep the customer-centric approach. That's one of the main lessons learned from the previous sessions when we were applying this customer discovery, customer development methodology. And the other pillar of the methodology was this lean startup approach that mainly what we were discussing was the importance of applying the scientific method. The scientific method basically is just framing a hypothesis, then running several experiments, and then measure those experiments. It was based on the loop build, measure, learn, and continuously improving all the time to basically develop and improve the product and our value proposition, and most importantly, the business model. Because sometimes we confuse, and we've seen that as well, we confuse a good product with a good business model. And there are companies that have great products that don't have great business models, and that makes a whole difference. So we will use Lean Startup in order to identify not just the right product for the right customer to solve the right problem, but also to do so and monetize it with the right value proposition, and therefore the right monetization model, and therefore the right growth model. Okay, so having said that, and I think I just summarized quite a few hours of conferences in 10 minutes or less. So sorry if I went way too broad, but I just wanted to know where we were and where we are heading up to. And we mentioned that we want to grow. We want to grow in terms of users and in terms of money, in terms of basically invoices, or how much money we make as a company. Now, I want to make a point about the difference between user growth and money growth. Sometimes we have the perception that the only key metric for our own growth is how much money we make. And of course, in certain companies, especially traditional ones, is one of the main key indicators. Of course, not just the money we make, but the gross margins and all these financial KPIs. In this case, in startups, they're dependent on the business model. Sometimes we need to pay attention to a different unit of growth, and that is users. Users could be at a certain rate, new users per month, new users as an overall, monthly users, daily concurrent users, whatever, based on the use of the product, not just how much money they're willing to pay. And that is very important, because when we talk about growth, we will talk about these two main dimensions, not just the monetary, but also the user growth approach. And that is, let me give you an example, WhatsApp. I'm sure you all use WhatsApp or Telegram or similar ones. And WhatsApp, for example, was sold to Facebook for a few billion euros, $few billion, and they had 900 million users. Now, they were not making money whatsoever. They were making just a few $1,000 that, people think they were making money from these downloads that you have to pay, if you're a late user, that you had to pay, I think it was like 69 cents or something like that, or 79 cents. I heard an interview with the founder, they did so not because they wanted to make money, because they just wanted to control their user growth, because it was way too big, so they didn't want to die from the scalability point of view, right? So it was not the main focus to make money. They wanted to grow, and just making people pay for that growth would have created friction, and that friction would have decelerate the user growth, and therefore they wouldn't have found traction. That is actually what we're going to talk about today. Now, the main topics that we will discuss, as you can see here, is first, what is traction? What is traction? And second, how do we measure traction? Not just in terms of KPIs, but how do we know if we are actually a company that has arrived to a traction stage, attractive stage per se. Now, the third aspect is how does it relate to what we've somehow discussed before in other webinars, but we will discuss as well in this webinar, what is called product market fit. What does product market fit have to do with traction? And also, we will discuss a little bit about what is called stacking the odds, basically how to overcome the uncertainty that is inherent to any startup, and try to use a different methodology. Once again, methodologies are very important. They help us lower our risk and apply certain lessons that we know from other entrepreneurs that lower the risk. So we will see, and we will pay a lot of attention to this approach that is called metrics for pirates. Okay, don't worry, I'm not calling you pirates, but you will act like such if you apply this methodology, and you will see that it's really interesting. We will make a specific also attention to growth and certain aspects of what they call growth hacking. We'll see what this concept is about. What is growth hacking? What has that to do with traction? And what is the relationship between them? Okay, and we will see some examples. So, something that we should have as well into consideration. You can see this guy, Gabriel Weinberg, said most startups don't fail at building a product. They fail at acquiring customers. Okay, I haven't discovered the holy, any surprise, any hidden secret in business, but this is just a good quote to make a reflection on how important it is to find customers, not just paying customers. Once again, how important it is to find customers. And this is especially important today, but in general in entrepreneurship, because I've met so many entrepreneurs, like you cannot believe. They were so much product focused, product obsessed, and the product might be great from a technical point of view, from a design point of view, and they try to, polish the axe all the time, but they never start cutting the tree because they never focus their attention and their resources into customer growth, customer acquisition, customer retention. And those are the main KPIs of the health of our business, regardless of how many they are paying. So, speaking of traction, it's one of the best way to have an idea of what traction is having this axis, this graph that it's comparing. Sorry, it's in Spanish, but it's comparing money or number of users with time. So, as you can see in a graph like that, there will be times where you will not be making a lot of money in a long time, so your graph will be somehow flat. And when you arrive to a certain point where the ratio between how many users you acquire, how many customers you acquire at a certain rate, that is when you're starting to get traction. And you will see that, you will feel it in a way. I know it's very, not very objective, but you will sense, you will feel when you arrive into traction stage. But at the same time, you will see, you will be able to measure it, because it will be a time where you will go from a flat organic growth rate to an exponential per se, sometimes not purely exponential, but somehow exponential growth rates between customer user acquisition and time, In the end, it's about how many users per week, how many users per day, how many users per month. That is a right measure of traction. When you see a major differential between the previous rate, previous month's rate, previous week's rate, and the new rate, then you will start acknowledging that you are reaching traction. Now, what are other ways to somehow feel that you're arriving to the traction state, that you have traction in your business? Well, you get it there, and your building blocks there. Basically, you say what you do matters to someone. When you have traction, it implies what you do matters to someone. That's what traction is all about. Building something meaningful, creating value, and that value is tangible through a download or just the usage, the sign up, or if we can make it, to pay for our customers. It proves that there's an existing market, because in a way that we don't know if the market that we put in our PowerPoint presentation that we think there is really there. Maybe, it's a potential market, but there is no real market of actual real customers or potential customers. So traction, when you are in this stage, you already know that you have an existing market, that you have customers willing to pay. Well, that, as I was telling you before, it's not always working like that, but it's the exception. Normally, when you're reaching traction, you get a lot of customers willing to pay. Even if you have what they call a freemium model, which is basically that maybe 90% of your customers use the product for free, but 10% of them pay for it. You can use examples like Tinder, for example, that most people use it for free, but others use it for like this premium or gold features or whatever features they are over there, or LinkedIn. That most people use it as a free platform, but a very few actually pay for it. But in a way, you got a demonstration that you got customers willing to pay. You got a validated business model. Once again, business models are the forgotten ones when we take into account our business. It's not about the product, it's not about even the customer, it's not even about the money, it's about the business model itself. How do we make money? What is our growth model? So when we arrive to a traction stage, then it means that we have a validated business model already. You are, in terms of culture, team, and skills, you are capable to build your product. It means that if you've created something that matters to people in an existing market, and you got customers willing to pay, and that payment is inside or within the right business model, it means you are a person, an entrepreneur that is capable to build your product, and at the same time to execute that business model. So imagine how important it is to find traction, and that's why a lot of investors at certain stages, they only invest in companies that have traction. And that is because it proves so many things about yourself, your team, your business model, the market opportunity, the product, everything, and of course the financial opportunity of monetizing and making money out of it. And eventually an exit that will make them get like 10 times what they invested. Otherwise they will not make a good exit, as we will discuss in the next sessions when we deal with fundraising. So this is traction, somehow how to measure it, what it proves, and we will put it in relationship with the right stage of development of the company. We've covered already those stages. We've seen the product hypothesis, we've identified the right customers, that's customer discovery, customer development. We've built the right MVP, the minimum viable product. We've tested that MVP and made quantitative and qualitative experiments to develop and improve that product through this build, measure, learn loop. And finally, we get to product market fit. And product market fit is like, I think I mentioned it before, it's when the product and the market fall in love, when they feel that, you know, that you've built something meaningful for the right people, and they merge, and that fit between your product and the market and your market is actually reaching to that stage is actually when you have traction. So if I had to make a sum up, basically traction is a way to measure whether you have reached product market fit or not. Okay? I'm gonna check if you've made any questions so far, but please, I encourage you to do so. Okay? EAE conference. Not so far. Not so far. Okay, so let's continue. Now, how do we make sure? How do we reach the traction? How do we get there? Because it's very easy to know, it's very easy to explain somehow, it's very easy to understand that you need to get to traction stage, but how do we get there? So basically it's all about growing customers, and not just growing customers, but retaining those customers and many other implications of that growth, right? It's not just acquiring new users or customers every month. That's completely worthless if those customers don't repeat, for example, or don't recommend or bring new customers. So in order to grow our business, our startup, even companies that are not purely startups, we have this framework that it's called Startup Metrics for Pirates. Okay? Now, why, and I guess now that you see the slide on your screen, you understand now why it's called Metrics for Pirates. It's not because you rob customers from other companies or you act like a pirate, but it's just a way to remember the acronym of the different stages of this framework on how to acquire customers and then how to make revenue from them, right? So that whole funnel, that whole process, it's called Metrics for Pirates. It's R, that is the way, you know, pirates scream when they're going to attack a boat, right? And basically this R stands for acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue. Acquisition, activation, referral, retention, and revenue. Okay? Now, we're gonna go through each one of these stages in order to see, not just to understand what they are, but also we will see some examples or some ideas that you could use in your own startup to increase your funnel in that specific stage. Okay? Now, regarding acquisition, basically, what does it mean to acquire a user? First of all, it's about acquiring a user, not a customer. Okay? There's a big difference between a user and a customer. A user is a person that uses or that interacts, that downloads, that makes or extracts value from our product or service. Now, a customer is a user that pays for that. Okay? So far we're not acquiring a customer. We're just acquiring a user. And that is very important to understand, because some people, they think that acquiring customers is as easy as, you know, just creating a Facebook ads campaign and, you know, waiting for people to pay. And that's not the way it works. You know, I'm sure if you think about it if you think yourselves as potential customers of, I don't know, like an e-commerce site. Imagine you're a phone company that sells iPhones on the internet. Well, then it doesn't work like you make an advertisement and that person goes to your website and goes to the checkout page. It doesn't work like that. Normally it takes between 6 to 7 times for a user to turn into a customer. Okay? So acquisition is when the user finds you. Imagine that it's not a startup, that is like a store that you have in a mall. And basically the acquisition is when you get the user to enter the store. Just entering. Just out of curiosity, it's like, oh, what is this shoe store, because they like the windows, the shoes that they were exposed at the windows, and so on, and they just enter the store. But the fact that you enter a store does not imply that you're going to pay and you're going to buy a pair of shoes. So this is the moment where you have acquired a user. Okay, now that could be considered your website visits per se, or even sometimes your downloads in certain cases, but most importantly your website visits, your web users. So once you have acquired a user, you try to, instead of making the person pay for anything, because that's way too violent per se, you need to turn that acquired user into an active user. Okay? So what is an active user? What is the activation stage? The activation stage is when the user interacts with you. Basically, how many people, imagine if you had a store or a restaurant, how many people enter the restaurant? They just see the menu, the prices, and and they just leave. Well, at least they know the restaurant, they know that they know what it is like. Maybe it's a vegetarian place and you don't like it, maybe it's a meat place and you don't like it, but at least you know the place. Or maybe it's just not the right moment, but you just wanted to enter, but maybe it was too crowded, but you will eventually go back, but at least you make the user enter. Well, this is the same thing that happens with websites and startups and certain applications. Basically what you do is you try to make that person that just entered your bar or your shoe store not just see what it is like and then leave and maybe just forget about it because there's so many other stores out there or so many other restaurants, but just to have something that will allow you to keep in touch with that person, so that maybe one day that person will buy or will consume or you will use your service. That is turning into an active user. Now, this explanation of when the user interacts with you basically is something as simple as subscribing to a newsletter, or subscribing, or just clicking like on Facebook, or following you on Instagram. That is the first interaction you have with a company. Or maybe just writing something or answering something on these chatbots that you can find on the websites and things like that. That's pretty much like it. Now, once we have this user active, imagine you are at this restaurant, you say, okay, would you mind giving me your email so we will send you a daily or a weekly newsletter with different menus for the week or special offers for potential subscribers or things like that? Well, once you have that email, once you have that data, once you have that contact information, you are able to go to the next stage, which is the retention. And that is very important because it's when the user not only interacts with you, but when the user likes you. Okay? What does that mean? How do I know if the user likes me? Well, basically, I know it if the interaction keeps on going. It's like you like a girl, you like a guy, you want to, be with that person, even you're in love and you want to marry, whatever. At the beginning, you approach to the person, then you get the phone number, that would be the activation. Then retention is asking for a date, maybe have a drink or two, have a nice talk. You don't do anything, and you keep maybe meeting for a few more drinks, quite a few more times, and then revenue, It's when you give the first kiss. That would be the first revenue stage. Well, of course, I'm describing a very conventional and traditional way to manage relationships, but you get the idea, right? Basically, you have acquired, activated, and retained a user, and that means in terms of websites and in e-commerce, basically it's like, imagine you have the Facebook page, and the person interacts with you, hits likes, makes comments or whatever, or receives your newsletter, and somehow it's you send them a blog post, for example, about something related to what you're selling or your company, and the person actually visits the blog. That's liking you. It's a way to show that the user is interested. It's potentially a customer. So we're getting closer to that funnel. We're getting closer. We got the person to come for a date with us, and it's been 2 times already that we've been to a date together. So that we could call a retained user. Don't call your couple a retained user, okay? Anyway, so here it's a stage that normally it's not before revenue, but sometimes they put it before, sometimes it's after. Depends whether the customer is already a customer or is still not a customer. But so let's jump to the next one. Let's jump to the revenue one. That is the most important. In the end, the customer needs to pay. So you cannot be dating indefinitely a person for the rest of your life. You eventually, something needs to happen, whatever it is. So that revenue means the user pays you. That's when the customer is born. So there's so many strategies, so many ways to measure if we are doing the right thing in terms of revenue tactics or revenue growth hacks that we'll discuss after. Once the user is a customer, that's when we should go back to the referral stage. The referral is, hey, and of course, this dating metaphor does not stretch to that extent, unless you want your ex-couple to recommend you to her friends or his friends. But in any case, I think that referral is or happens when the customer is so happy that recommends or prescribes your product or service, which is very common. There are certain ways to do it naturally, voluntarily, and other ways are incentivized ways, and we will focus on them as well. And depending on your growth model, remember again how important the business model was, depending on the growth model, these stages will be more or less important. For example, if I have an e-commerce website and I just sell shoes, well, referral is interesting, but it will not be super intensive. I mean, you will have people that will say, hey, I love these shoes, so you recommend those shoes or the website to your friends, or you post your shoes and give a link to the e-commerce site. But in the end, it's not going to make you get traction from the referral stage. Now, if you're Dropbox or you are, even Facebook, the number or the ratio of people recommending your website is an actual KPI, key performance indicator, that you're growing at the right pace or the right rate. And that is because this business model will not be based so much on acquiring new customers, but on viralizing those customers, so that each customer brings you 3 new customers. So you have like an exponential growth rate, and therefore most of your efforts perhaps should be focused on the referral stage. And you will need to run as many experiments as you can, or as efficient experiments as you can, to develop your referral stage in your referral metrics. Okay, so this is an explanation of how you go from the acquisition stage to the revenue stage, going through activation and retention, and eventually referral, recommending other users, other customers. So please don't forget that. This is very important. It will help you through your whole life as an entrepreneur, having this mindset of these metrics for pirates: acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral. Referral revenue, as you want, towards. So this is a very good graphic on the different stages of the funnel, where you will see more specific growth drivers and the metrics that you can use in order to know whether you are improving or not in the acquisition stage. Now, let's start from the acquisition part, okay? Before I'm gonna check, I'm sorry, since I have no presenter today, I need to check myself, and I think it's better that to, having you make a question and not answering. Okay, not so far. So, acquisition. How do we make people come to our website, and not just come to our website and quickly leave, but just stay for a few seconds? Why is that important? Because there's a big difference between what they call bounce rate. A bounce rate, when you analyze your visits to your website, is the rate of users that come to your website and before the first 20 seconds they leave, because that is a measure of people that enter there for the wrong reason. They enter this shoe place because they thought it was a fashion place, or they enter your bar because they thought it was a restaurant, or it was even worse, it was just a fashion store, or whatever, a clothing store. That is not an indicator of traffic, because it's traffic that got there for the wrong reason. If I make an advertisement on Facebook that is misleading towards what actually my company is selling, it doesn't matter how much traffic I get, because that traffic, if the bounce rate is high, that traffic is worthless. You're just wasting your time and your money, and you're doing something wrong. So it's important to identify it, because sometimes you might believe that you're getting traffic when you're truly not getting the right traffic, and that will affect your own metrics. Because if you're measuring if you're noticing that you have, let's say, 1,000 visits and one sale, well, that's a terrible conversion rate. But maybe out of 1,000 visits, 500 came to visit you for the wrong reason. So you should do something so that you better focus on these 500 visits, you discard these other 500, and then your conversion rates will be much higher, and all your efforts on the next stages will be more efficient, more targeted, more focused. Okay? So, acquisition. Growth drivers. What can you do, for example, to acquire new users? For example, you can do app store optimization in case you have an app, a native app, in terms of how appealing is your app in the marketplace, how the screenshots, the description, the pricing, whatever. That is a good growth driver. The ratings and the reviews. I'm sure you've known that anytime you go to Amazon, first thing you look is the ratings. At least I do. Same here. Same with the app. When you get an app, you see if they have very bad reviews, your traffic will be low, because people actually trust other users. Paid advertisement. Once again, careful with the paid advertisement, because in a way you're paying for people to visit your website, so eventually it's so easy to get visits since you're paying for them. But you need to make sure that these tactics need to be focused for the right value proposition. Or digital traditional marketing. Well, there's so many growth drivers. We will see in the next slide more strategies and more growth hacks for this stage. Now, how do we measure our acquisition? Well, it could be downloads, in case we're not a website, we're just an app. Installs, how many people actually download or install our app. App Store product page visits, that could be another way. Site visits, or just website visits. That would be the main, or people entering your restaurant or your store. I'm sure you don't have a counter, but could be interesting to just have an idea of how many people actually enter your restaurant just to look around, or your hotel or whatever. Now, next stage, activation. What are the main growth drivers? How do we drive them into active users? This is more specific to a mobile app. Well, for example, customer onboarding. How do you make someone that just downloaded your website, your app, installed it, but it's so complicated that eventually it just uninstalls the application immediately? And I don't remember now the percentage, but it was a huge percentage of the people. And just think about yourselves, that downloads the app, tries the app, and within the first 30 seconds keeps the app or not. So if you do a customer onboarding, which means, these parts where you tell the user how to use it, what is it going to do, what is the process and everything, then you might engage that person and make that person become more interested. Another way is one-step registration with email or Facebook. Aren't you tired of those sign-up processes where you need to give your first name, last name, phone number, email address, a password, double-check your password, and so on? There's so much friction when you don't even know what the app is doing or the website is doing. So Facebook Connect or Google Connect there are ways to lower the friction and therefore have more active users. And how do you measure those active users? Well, registrations, your session length. Let's say an active user is a user that has spent more than, let's say, 2 minutes in your website. Screens per session, or 1 day retention. A person that keeps your app for more than 1 day, for example, which means that it's an active user. In terms of apps, that's the way it works. In terms of websites or e-commerce, you have other ways to see it, and the best ways are basically how many people sign up to your newsletter, how many people hit like on Facebook. Why it's important to have people hit like? Not because of the vanity metrics. We'll discuss that later. It's not about the number of likes that you have. That will make you think you're more popular, but in the end what matters is that these likes are for the right reason. And if you have likes because you bought those likes, you can buy them on Facebook ads, might not be worth it. But if you make people like you on Facebook so that they can have an update of whatever new post, new picture, anything that you upload, that is why having a user that hits like is important, okay? Because it's an active user, she's shown interest. So my best advice is just to keep, for example, these pop-ups that you have to be very careful not to make them intrusive or too spammy. For that, there's this application, for example, called sumo.com, SUMO, Sumo. Sumo is a free application to install on your website, or this pop-up that tells you, hey, leave us your email and we'll give you a discount or whatever. So if you combine SumoMe, or that is called Sumo, with MailChimp, MAIL chimp as the monkey, MailChimp.com. These two applications will help you through the whole process of activation of users and then the retention of those users. So let's go to retention. In a mobile application, retention could be just done through proactive communication, loyalty campaigns, push notifications, re-engagement ads. Okay, what is re-engaging ads? Imagine that, and this is very, very, very important. It is really, really important because many people don't know. I'm sure you've experienced it, but you don't know how it's done. Perhaps. How many times have you visited a website, even Amazon, And then one day after, or 2 days, or 1 week after, you start seeing all those this advertisement in everywhere you are. That is called retargeting or remarketing, and that is very important because the main objective of that company is to keep you in their top of mind. I mean, to keep you in, keep them in your top of mind. Sorry. So they have this retargeting companies that just Google it, retargeting campaigns. You will see a few companies that will help you with that. And these retargeting campaigns are automatically set so that you will see for the next 90 days different ads in Facebook and other displays, other publishers of your of the page or the product page that you visited or the company that you visited, and so on. So re-engagement ads is very important. There are even re-engagement emails. That is a more sophisticated way to do retargeting, which is, once they got your email address and you visited a certain website, their website, there's technology that can track that you have visited a product page and send you an email with an advertisement or an offer for similar products in that category. Okay, so that is very important to retain the customer or the user and eventually make the person actually buy. Push notifications, same thing. How many times you've acknowledged that you had an application installed in your iPhone because they sent you an application saying, oh, it's time to sleep. How about we do whatever with this application before you go to sleep? Or even there are native notifications in your Chrome, in your browser, that also can remind you that they still exist. Okay, so you become more recurrent with your interaction with them and then eventually become a customer. So ways to measure this retention. Well, this end day retention, monthly active users, very important, or the session frequency. Now, referral, as I told you, I believe it should go at the end, but anyway, let's assume that now we are at the referral stage. How do we make our customers or users refer us to other customers or users? Well, there are many. For example, rating prompts, one-click sharing, for example, could be incentivized. How many times have you been to these coffee shops where they ask you, hey, just share this and we'll give you Wi-Fi for free? Well, that's because you've shared something in your timeline and therefore you did a referral growth hack in order to bring other users and customers to the website of that brand. Okay, so incentivized sharing, as I was telling you, social contact list integration. There's so many. I will give you a few examples after of companies like Airbnb or even Hotmail that is not even existing already, but it's like the classics of the growth hacking. And the ways to measure this is how many referrals you get per month, how many people arrived or became customers thanks to other customers. And that's a very important metric. App Store ratings and reviews is another way to measure it. The more reviews you have, that's like a prescription in a way, because they're recommending your product and therefore it will be easier to convert. Or social buzz, people just publishing on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, how many shares you have of your product or service. So we will need to improve these metrics of each and every specific stage, and it's like an art in a way, because it's something that is not easy. It's not just like a simple process that you start from acquisition and you end up with revenue. You need to do a little bit of everything and then put focus on a specific stage at the right time with the right tactics and measure it with the right KPIs. So I'm not saying it's difficult, I'm just saying it's not sequential, it's not simple, okay? But if you make that and if you actually pay attention to this, you probably will integrate it better. And the last stage, revenue, in the end, the important one, how do we make people actually buy from our website? Well, it's actually one of the most important ones and the most difficult ones. But in the end, I would tell you that my best advice to increase revenue from already engaged users is to build a very usable, simple to use, engaging, conversion-oriented product. Okay, that's the main aspect. You know, the simpler you build it, the less friction, because people that, you know, there will be so many people that want to buy from your website, and you're not allowing them to buy from your website or from your app, because you make it difficult for them. So taking out that friction is one of the main aspects on how to turn those engaged customer users into real customers. Of course, in the end, a person that wants to buy needs to be motivated to buy. So apart from having a usable, in terms of UX, UI website or application, you have to have the right product, of course. And therefore, you need to have the right motivation to buy that product. So how do we motivate ourselves to buy? It's simple. Sometimes we need a promotion. We need the last push to make a sale, right? To make a purchase, sorry. So first technique, sales and promotions, discounts. Very important, just don't abuse. Because I've seen many e-commerce websites where you give them so many discounts all the time that your client will not buy from you unless you give him a discount. And therefore, you might think you're selling, but if you're losing your margins because you're giving discount products all the time, and they're not buying when you're not with a discount because they feel stupid, because you're giving so many that if you don't get a discount, it's a shame. Well, then you know, you have to keep that in harmony. Let me give you an example. That happened to me yesterday. I had a customer from Food in the Box that spent huge amount of money in boxes. What I mean huge is 150 euros, okay? It might not be huge for you, but it is for the average order value, that it's in 33, 35 euros, because he bought like 10 different boxes or something like that, like 10 different recipes. And what happened? That 2 days after, we sent a newsletter with a 20% discount for Valentine's Day. So the customer wrote us and said, I want to cancel my order and make a new order without discount. Well, we lost a lot of money with that. It's not a lot of money in terms of, you know, in absolute terms, but in terms of strategy, we were too aggressive with that discount, and perhaps that discount shouldn't have been given to that person at that time. Those discounts they need to be targeted to the right people, not to your already existing customers, because once again, you're spoiling them in a way. You need to make them feel unique because they're customers, and so you have to increase their loyalty, but at the same time, don't spoil them, don't make them used to receiving discounts from you. Another way to drive sales, apart from sales and promotions, is downloadable content. That is very important. It's called freebies. It's like something that you can download. If you buy this, I will also give you this ebook or this white paper or this file with resources. Another way is with personalization, but that's in terms of UX, UI. Once again, to make it easy, to make it simple, to actually smooth that process. And frequent updates. Well, once again, UX, UI, the most important thing. To have a good product and good pricing, then to have the right sales and promotions strategy, and just have a checkout process super simple. There are other little hacks that you can do in order to drive these users into customers. For example, something as stupid as shipping. Okay, we experienced when we started Food in the Box For example, we've experienced a lot of churn, a lot of people that started the checkout process by going to checkout and not finishing the checkout process, not just giving the credit card number. And we were trying to understand why was that happening. Of course, you will always have a very big percentage of that, and you should measure that. That's why it's so important to analyze these metrics, to use Google Analytics or Mixpanel or Unbounce, or I mean, there's so many platforms that you can use, but I would just recommend you to start with Google Analytics because it's free. So when we were seeing that, wow, there are many people dropping out from our checkout process, we realized that shipping costs were not included in the when they started the order, and once they saw the shipping cost, they decided not to buy. So what we did is what if, once again, it's a hypothesis, it's an experiment, and then we measure and see if that was confirmed or not. What if we make shipping costs for free after €35 order, and we put that price, we actually send that price, we apply that shipping cost for us to the actual final price. In the end, the customer was going to pay exactly the same. We raised our prices, but we gave shipping costs for free. And the conversion rate went up so much, it's not even funny. So that's a very good example of a growth hack in the revenue stage that you can use to drive more people into sales. Okay, the way to sell it, to measure it, is through average revenue per user. That is very important. It's called average revenue per user or average order value, and that's a very, very important KPI. I told you before, ours is 33, 35. It started from 12, euros. And now we want to raise it up to 45 because we want to start subscription service with more recipes per week. So, in a way, it's all about, and I think I've told you that before, but it's very, very, very important. Okay, there is one magical equation in a startup. One is CPA, cost per acquisition. The other metric is LTV, lifetime value. So you need to have a low cost per acquisition, how much money you spend acquiring customers, and a very high lifetime value, which is the root margin, the gross margin that you get throughout the life of a customer. Now, how do you do that? Well, in the end, if you want to have low cost per acquisition, it means that you need to polish, you need to optimize these stages so that, let's say you got 1,000 customers because you got the acquisition of 1,000 customers. How much did you spend bringing those customers in? If you spend 1,000, well, then you have a certain CPA. But if you make it so that you can spend 500 euros in order to get those same 1,000 customers, then you just lower your CPA by half. Now, if you convert those users, into active users, well, the better the ratio, then the higher the ratio of conversion will be after, and therefore your clients will be cheaper to acquire. So that's in terms of CPA, and that's very important. Basically, investors want you to have 3 to 4 times, if you can make it, 2 to 3 times your CPA should be your lifetime value. So if you spend 50 euros acquiring a customer, then at least your lifetime value should be 150 to have a healthy business model. Okay. So let me tell you, in e-commerce, sometimes CPA could be 50, 40, 60, even 100. Our competitors, I've seen recently, like Blue Apron or HelloFresh, they have 150 euros to spend to acquire customers. Starbucks has a cost per acquisition of I think it was 800 euros and a lifetime value of 14,000. So anyway, average order value or average revenue per user is very important, because the more they spend on you, the higher will be your lifetime value. But not just they have to spend more, they need to spend it more often, not just one purchase per year, but maybe 3 purchases per year. So then your acquisition costs is the same, but your lifetime value is much higher. So the ratio between CPA and LTV is much better, much healthier per se. So another way to measure revenue, not just the average revenue, but the customer lifetime value, or the number of app purchases or app subscriptions or in-app transactions, ad revenue, or just sales per month. That could be a good way to to measure revenue. Okay, so let's check once again. Please make any questions. Okay, not so far. So, different examples. What can we do to work acquisition? All these techniques you can do to increase your number of customers or visitors in this case. You can use social networks. You can do SEM, search engine marketing, which means like Google AdWords or LinkedIn ads, Facebook ads as well. You can use blogs, very important. It's one of the cheapest and most efficient ways to increase your audience to your website, which is what it's called content marketing. And I would advise you to start from there. Emails, SEO, very important. There are many companies that they get their money from the SEO because they find them on Google, and then they get to the website, and then eventually they become customers. We've experienced that in Food in the Box. In fact, I need to admit that I thought, and I told my CMO, my Chief Marketing Officer, not to focus on SEO because I thought it would be marginal traffic compared to what we could get from other sources. And now he proved me wrong, and we making a lot of clients coming from Google. PR, it's the cheapest way to make your customers, your users come to your website. The more disruptive or subversive you become, the more politically incorrect, the more audacious you become, the better. Best example, it's Hawkers. There's glasses, the company that sells glasses. They've done crazy stuff, incredibly crazy stuff, and they raised awareness and therefore traffic and therefore sales to the website. Campaigns, contests, you can do that with a lot of blogs, other Facebook pages that say, hey, if you sell shoes, it's like, would you like to make a promotion of a pair of shoes for your users, and whoever answers whatever question from your audience will get a pair of shoes from our company? Well, it's a way for that blogger or influencer to give value to the users, and at the same time to promote your company. And direct TV, direct email marketing, direct marketing, television or telephone. Well, sometimes TV is thought to be way too expensive, and so people don't even consider it. And in a way, it is true, but you need to be aware that there is this method, this system called, or this way to actually be on TV through a media for equity, and that means that you make an arrangement with could be a local channel from your community, could be a national TV, could be anywhere, that you tell this company, hey, you got a great large audience that it's similar to what I sell, potentially buy my product. I don't have money to pay to make an advertisement on your TV, but how about you give me your time, your slot, and I will give you equity, I will give you shares of my company. and you will be surprised how many companies are open to that. So that is for acquisitions. And now let's assume that we got those customers applying these techniques, and then we went to this activation stage. Now, once again, you can do this homepage, landing page with product features and everything, and then once you build a landing page, you orient your whole landing page to a subscribing CTA, call to action. Okay, that's why try to see from now on, when you reach to an advertisement from Facebook or Google, you will see that it's not the actual official website. It's a specific page that's called a landing page, and it will have almost all the time the same structure. It will have the main claim, value proposition, then a tagline explaining a little bit of the value proposition, quickly give you the first 3 benefits, main features of your product, service, and then we'll try to drive your motivation to say, hey, get a discount, download whatever if you leave us your email here. That is a strategy oriented to get emails, subscribers, interested users that eventually will become our customers. So that is for activation. Now, retention. Basically, it's about creating content of value, and you can send that content or share that content through the newsletter or through the Facebook channel, LinkedIn. Many people, it's increasing the number of companies I start to know that use LinkedIn as a retention channel. Basically, just have your own blog. You can not necessarily have your own blog. You can create what's called Medium, medium.com, and you can post certain blog posts, and that's it. Not necessarily to keep a whole blog running. And that would be like a few ways to apply retention techniques to turn those users into customers. If you can say, for example, this process can be automated. That's why it's very important to use tools or apps like MailChimp, as I was mentioning before, because you can use certain features that says, hey, let's say, for example, for a new subscriber, I want to send these 5 different emails explaining 5 different things about my product, service, or company, or just different information about what we do, and send a different one each day of the week, every day of the week, or every week, so that in a way you have this automated email automation or automated process to communicate and retain your customer, or just so that when you publish a new blog post, it's automatically sent to your subscriber list and post it on Facebook. You can automate most of these tasks. You don't need to have a whole marketing department to do all these things that we're talking about. Basically, that you can automate it. So referral. There are many techniques. We will see a few in a few minutes. But basically, I'm sure you all remember this Dropbox campaign where they told you, hey, if you share that with a friend, you will be able to get more gigabytes of space or whatever, right? So that's another way to increase and run other strategies. Okay, now I think we got like 5 more minutes. So I wanted to discuss about other techniques and other stages of this, and that will be about traction. About one system that is called the bull's eye, and that is a way or a framework that is complementary to metrics for pirates, and that it will help us to say, okay, but how do we prioritize? When should we start to do acquisition? When should we start to do activation? Well, Should we focus on email campaigns? Should we focus on advertisement campaigns, on power and pay-per-click? Well, basically, my main advice is to focus on at first to do a lot of experimentation, but then applying this bullseye technique, just focus on the 2-3 acquisition channels that help you the most to grow. Now, this is probably the most important concept as far as growth goes, and that is your acquisition channel. Okay, let me give you an example. You can get clients from Google, from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from blogs, from like so many places, okay? But there will always be a channel, one source where most of your customers are there. So my advice, or my last advice, would be try to identify, after a few experiments, what channel makes you grow the most. And if you do so, and if you manage to find it, then you will be able probably to focus all your strategies of acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral, and all those. You will be able to apply them and grow from there. Sorry, it's just that the cable here was lost. Anyway, it's okay. We finished anyway. So there's nothing more to see in the slideshow. So anyway, to sum it up, just try to find and identify your acquisition channel, your growth channel, and then apply all these techniques. And depending on what is the right time to apply acquisition techniques or referral techniques, it will be way different. And it's also about common sense. Imagine why would I focus too much on referral when I have no clients? So it's it's very stupid to focus on referral techniques if I just have 5 clients a month. I should focus on having maybe 50 clients per month. Now, in order to do that, should I focus my efforts on the conversion rate? Yes, probably you should. Instead of driving a lot of traffic and focusing a lot of money and resources on acquiring traffic, if that traffic is not converting the right way, then you're losing your money. You're throwing your money away. So before you focus on acquisition strategies, just try to be, that's why I told you before, focus on content. Just create valuable content. Just try to drive organic visits to your website. Don't pay for advertisement at the beginning unless you want to run very specific experiments to see whether a segment is your segment, or whether you more focus on sports people or I don't know, like old people, whatever. Unless you want to do an A/B testing, my recommendation would be just try to grow organically at the beginning and focus your funnel efforts on the revenue part of it, which is activation and revenue. I would say activation, retention, and revenue, because if you have that sales machine efficient, then whatever efforts you put to increase the number of visits into the funnel, it will not be leaking because you're not converting the right way. And once you have that, then maybe you can focus on referral because you have enough customers to create a referral program, and your value proposition will be already more polished and more developed. And therefore, it will be the right time to focus on referral techniques. Once again, it also depends on your growth engine, but for the most part, I would focus on that. And at the same time, if we focus too much on converting the traffic we get, but we don't focus on getting traffic, then we might have a very efficient money machine, but no traffic whatsoever. So once you feel that the improvements that you're making on these stages are very slight, they're not very much different from one experiment to another, that's probably the time where you should focus on driving more traffic, because the fine tuning that you will do to that process will not be worth it compared to the effect that you will have by actually trying to drive more traffic. And you might get some leaking, you could have been better, but at least you will get enough traffic. So just think of this pipe of water. You bring water, but not too much, so it's not overwhelming, and you don't put too much water, too much effort on bringing too much water if the funnel is not smooth yet, and the water does not go to the right pipes, right? So once you drive the right pipes and design the right pipes, that's when you should start acquiring more customers and even paying to acquire those customers. Because if an investor sees that you have traction, they will give you the money because to grow, because they will know that for each and every euro that you spend on acquiring a customer, your sales machine will be so optimized that, and it will be increasingly more optimized with time, then they will understand the ratios, and they will trust in a company that has low cost per acquisition and high lifetime value. So to sum up, we've seen how important the traction is in a company at that stage, when it is, what are the signals and what are the attributes of that traction, why it's so important, how do we recognize that we have it, that we got into a business model with traction, what are the right frameworks in order to arrive to that and to reach to that traction and therefore be in this product market fit stage, and what are the different methodologies and the different paths, the different stages, and the different strategies to increase these indicators on each stage, and what are the different KPIs to measure the right performance on these stages. Once we do that, we will be sure that we got something really powerful within us and our company, and therefore it might be the right time to go for a big investment round, because you will have validated the previous stages: right product, right market, right customers, right growth rates, right growth systems or business and revenue streams and growth engines, and therefore we will become a scalable and healthy in terms of business and technology and scalability business model. So I hope this was useful. I know this by itself could lead to a whole master on different growth hacks and different techniques, and even though there's no perfect source or perfect recipe for in order to increase our customer base, but at least we will optimize our efforts, because our resources will be so limited that we will need to optimize it. And with this framework, I think you will have better chances to succeed. So thank you so much, and I will see you next session.